Right now, southern Sicily is facing one of the most devastating landslides in recent history. Entire neighborhoods have been swallowed by the earth, leaving thousands of residents displaced and emergency teams racing against time. This is not a single event. It is a catastrophic chain reaction caused by extreme rainfall, unstable terrain, and years of unaddressed geological vulnerability. Over the past weeks, the small town of Nishami has been under constant threat. Heavy storms dumped record-breaking rainfall across the region, saturating clay and sand layers beneath the town. These layers, normally stable when dry, transformed into a thick, unstable paste. Gravity has been pulling the plateau toward the valley for generations, and now the slope has finally given way. Provincial roads connecting Nishami to the outside world have been destroyed, leaving only a single main artery as the route in and out. More than 2,000 residents have already been relocated for their safety. Emergency services are working non-stop, using helicopters, specialized rescue teams, and geotechnical experts to monitor ongoing ground movement and assist residents in navigating the disaster zone. What makes this disaster especially alarming is its scale. Estimates indicate that more than 350 million cubic meters of soil and debris have been displaced, making this landslide nearly 1.5 times larger than the infamous 1963 Vajont disaster. The destruction has not spared homes, farms, or infrastructure. Entire neighborhoods are now at risk, while roads, bridges, and farmland lie buried under thick layers of earth. Authorities have classified Nishami as an R4 geological risk zone, the highest possible level in Italy. This classification existed long before the latest landslide and highlights a long-standing vulnerability that authorities failed to address fully over decades. The current emergency has mobilized the Italian government, with emergency funding and specialized teams now deployed to stabilize what remains and assist displaced residents for weeks after January 25th. One stone cross in the Sante Croce district, a symbol of resilience and hope, sat just meters from the growing abyss. This cross had stood for nearly 3 decades, erected to commemorate previous disasters. On February 9th, the ground beneath it gave way, and the cross fell into the void. Authorities later recovered it in pieces, a stark reminder of the relentless power of nature. The landslide front stretches several kilometers, and experts warn that even a small amount of additional rainfall could trigger further movement. Every day, geologists and civil protection teams monitor the unstable slopes using satellite imagery, ground sensors, and on-site inspections to anticipate possible reactivations of the slide. Emergency evacuation zones have been extended, and any new rainfall could further destabilize already precarious terrain. This event is the culmination of multiple factors. On January 16th, the first landslide tore apart Provincial Road 12, forcing 35 families to evacuate. Just 2 days later, Cyclone Harry made landfall, dumping massive rainfall in a matter of hours. Between January 18th and January 21st, southern Sicily received the equivalent of an entire year's rainfall in just 3 days, saturating the ground and pushing unstable layers to their limits. On January 25th, a second massive landslide tore open a 4-kilometer gash along the western and southern edge of the town. Residents fled with whatever they could carry. By January 26th, Italy's Council of Ministers declared a state of emergency, allocating emergency funds across the affected regions. But this was only the beginning. On January 28th, Italy's Prime Minister arrived by helicopter to assess the situation. Civil Protection Chief Fabio Siciliano confirmed that houses on the edge of the landslide could no longer be occupied, and residents would need permanent relocation. The government began planning demolitions and long-term safety measures. The human impact is immense. Families have lost homes, businesses, and community landmarks that have stood for generations. Hundreds of buildings have been declared unsafe. Farms, orange groves, olive orchards, and gardens that sustained families for decades now lie buried under debris. The community faces the daunting challenge of rebuilding on unstable ground while monitoring ongoing geological risk. Technical teams from universities and civil agencies are actively assessing the landslide. Satellite imagery from the Italian Space Agency, ground sensors, and expert inspections help determine which areas are most at risk. The red zone boundaries are still being evaluated, and additional rainfall could trigger new slides. Engineers and geologists are racing against time to create buffer zones and safety plans, but the scale of the disaster makes these efforts extremely complex. Emergency services continue to evacuate residents and provide temporary shelter. More than 2,000 people have already been relocated, with dozens remaining in temporary accommodations. Helicopters shuttle residents to safer locations, while road access remains limited due to collapsed infrastructure. The priority remains safety and preventing any further casualties or displacement. The historical context makes the situation even more urgent. Nishami sits on a plateau composed of clay and sand layers that have long been known to be unstable when saturated. Previous landslides, including one in 1997, highlighted the need for preventive measures. While some stabilization work was funded decades later, none fully addressed the town's geological vulnerabilities. The collision of extreme weather, saturated terrain, and human settlements built atop unstable layers created a disaster that could not have been avoided without long-term intervention. The numbers tell a stark story: 350 million cubic meters of displaced material, 4 to 5 kilometer landslide front, 2,000 residents evacuated, hundreds of buildings unsafe or destroyed, ongoing risk of further slides. The cross recovered from the landslide serves as a poignant symbol. While physical structures can fall, the resilience of communities and the determination of emergency teams endures. Authorities continue to investigate causes, assess damage, and plan for the reconstruction of the affected areas. Long-term stabilization and monitoring measures are being implemented to prevent a repeat of this disaster. The Sicily landslide highlights the intersection of extreme weather, human settlement, and geological risk. Emergency services remain on high alert, and residents are advised to adhere to evacuation orders and safety guidelines. With continued monitoring and government intervention, the hope is to secure what remains of the town and prevent further loss. As the ground beneath Nishami continues to shift, the story is far from over. Every day, emergency teams, geologists, and local authorities work together to understand the scope of movement, anticipate potential dangers, and protect those who remain in surrounding areas. This is not just a story of a landslide, it is a story of resilience, preparation, and the ongoing challenge of coexisting with nature's unpredictable power. As the ground beneath Nishami continues to shift, the town remains on high alert. Emergency teams and geologists work tirelessly, monitoring every movement and preparing for any new threat. Thousands of residents have already been relocated, but the question remains, how much longer will the plateau hold? Every heavy rainfall could awaken the unstable slopes again. This disaster is far from over, and the story of Nishami is a stark reminder. Nature's power is relentless, and preparedness is the only defense. Stay tuned, because the ground may move again, and when it does, every second will matter.